Call him Mr. Right, Mr. Conservative, and Mr. Constitution. But you can call him Mark at 877-381-3811.
Well, it's a pleasure to introduce Rand Paul to the program for the first time. Rand Paul, how are you, sir?
Very good. Good to be with you, Mark.
It's a pleasure. Listen, you're duking it out there in Kentucky, and I'm going to tell you why I like you, Rand Paul, because you actually believe in the Constitution. And even though you take a lot of heat, we have advisors to the president, Cass Sunstein, who says, what are we supposed to do over the weekend? Get in a time machine in order to figure out the public understanding when the Constitution was ratified? Well, I don't know. What do you think?
Understanding of what my opponent thinks. When the health care bill passed, we went to Frankfurt and we said, you know what, you're the Attorney General. Why don't you sign on to challenge the constitutionality? And he got on the news programs and he said, well, I've got a copy of the Constitution, and where in it does it say you have a right not to have insurance? And I was like, what law school did this guy go to? Has he not read the 9th and 10th Amendments? Does he not understand that your rights are not completely listed, but they're not to disparage those rights not listed?
You know what? That's scary. Stupid scary.
But completely upside-down notion of the Constitution to think that if it doesn't say you have a right not to have insurance, that in no way would you have any of these freedoms left to the people.
So he believes the government has the authority to compel a private citizen to buy private insurance, whether the citizen wants it or not, and that's under the Commerce Clause.
Yeah, I tell people in my speeches, I say, look, if my shoes were made in Tennessee, they can regulate my walking in Kentucky. That's how crazy the Commerce Clause has become.
Well, what did you think when Kagan was questioned by Coburn about whether the Congress has the power to tell us what 3 vegetables and fruits to eat, and she sidestepped it? That was pretty stunning.
Amazing. You remember in Goldwater's book, he talked about Wickard v. Filburn way back in the in the 40s, which I think is a great case, and I'll bring that up in my speeches. You know, a guy wants to grow 20 acres of crops and feed them to his cattle. And the government says, no, you can only grow 10 acres. And he grows the 20 acres. And they say, well, how did I affect interstate commerce? He says, well, by feeding your livestock and not selling it, you've indirectly affected the price of grain. Completely crazy.
What's interesting about that case, because, the government brought that. We're helping litigate against this with the Attorney General in Virginia, Landmark Legal Foundation. I'll tell you what's interesting. This is actually worse than that case, this mandate, because I, as a consumer, I literally am not producing anything. The insurance company's producing policies. I'm not producing anything. So they're telling me not only do I have to purchase something, whether I'm producing something or not. In other words, it even takes it one step too far. That's why they've backed off now, and they're now arguing it's a tax, but it's not that easy. Let me ask you something. I believe this nation really is at the precipice. We either decide we want to be a free people who respect each other's private property rights, who believe in the rule of law, or we decide that the Constitution doesn't have a hell of a lot of meaning anymore, like your opponent, and the government can tax us pretty much any way it wants to, pretty much for any purpose it wants to. Just call it a right or a reform. Isn't that about where we are?
Yeah, and what I tell people all the time is that if we have no constitutional restraint, then we live in a pure democracy, and that's what Jefferson called mob rule, and that's what our founding fathers warned us against. We want to live in a constitutional republic. We don't want a democracy where 50% of the people could decide that you can't have gun ownership, or 50% of the people could decide that you have no freedom of speech. We wanted a government that was restrained and also a democracy that couldn't vote to take away the rights of the people.
I actually think that the left isn't sure what it wants, whether it wants a mobocracy or more of an iron-fisted authoritarian type. You don't need to answer this. I don't want to get you in trouble. This is just me spouting off here. Or more of an iron-fisted type situation coming from the top down, or whatever works. But let me ask you this. If you go to the United States Senate, you're going to be under enormous pressure to to quiet down, not pipe up so much, to kind of go along, you and some of the other folks who I have the greatest amount of admiration and hope for, Sharon Angle and many others, Marco Rubio. Can you promise us that's just not going to happen to you?
Absolutely. The other interesting thing about this Tea Party is they want to make us out to be a bunch of rubes from the sticks, but I've met a couple of these folks. Mike Lee was a clerk to Alito. Joe Miller's a Yale graduate of law school. I mean, there's some people out there who I think really have the intellectual capacity to lead a major movement in this country, and I don't think we're going to be wowed or cowed by these people.
Now, your website is randpaul2010.com, randpaul2010.com. I guess they're throwing everything in the kitchen sink at you, right?
They are. We're trying to match them. We're going to do something actually that's interesting that's never, ever been done. We're going to do what's called an internet webathon. We've seen money bombs where we raise money in one day, and we've raised over $1 million online. We're going to actually have a webathon, like an old Jerry Lewis telethon, but we're going to do it with constant live stream on our website on Thursday.
Well, that'll be fascinating. RandPaul2010.com. We'll have that on our website and on my social sites. You'll actually be one of those folks who swears to uphold the Constitution and who actually means it, right?
Well, see, I read this book, Liberty and Tyranny, and I wind up quoting it all over the place.
Well, you're very kind. Listen, we really do wish you the best. I might like to have you back one more time before the election, if you don't mind.
Well, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Well, God bless you, my friend, and good luck.
Thank you.
That's RandPaul2010.com.